The cold metal of the ship's interior hummed with a low, ominous energy as Captain Marcus stared down the alien across from him. General Zynar, towering and covered in scales that shimmered with an unnatural light, stood with an air of arrogance, his 4 eyes fixed on the weapon in Marcus's hand. The room was dim, shadows playing on the walls, as the tension between them thickened. "What is that toy you're holding?" Zynar's voice was a guttural growl, dripping with contempt. His lips curled into a sneer, revealing rows of sharp, glistening teeth. The disdain in his gaze was unmistakable. He saw nothing but an inferior species before him. Marcus tightened his grip on the weapon, a seemingly crude device with wires and exposed circuits, far from the sleek, polished technology the aliens flaunted. "This toy," Marcus began, his voice calm but firm, "is going to change everything." Zynar's laugh echoed through the chamber, cold and mocking. "You humans never cease to amuse. Your race is weak, your technology primitive. Do you really believe that piece of junk will stand against the might of the Xyloxy Empire?" The captain's eyes narrowed, his jaw tightening. He had faced skeptics before, even among his own ranks. When the weapon was first proposed, many had dismissed it as a desperate gamble, a last-ditch effort from a species on the brink of extinction. But Marcus knew better. He had seen the devastating power of the aliens' weapons, their ability to tear through human defenses like paper. This was humanity's response, a weapon designed not with elegance, but with raw, brutal effectiveness. "This isn't about what you think," Marcus replied, his voice steady, almost measured. "It's about what you don't see." The alien general took a step forward, his towering frame casting a long shadow over Marcus. "Then show me, human! Show me the power of your so-called weapon!" Marcus didn't flinch. He felt the weight of every life depending on him, the pressure of proving humanity's worth in a galaxy that had already written them off. But beneath that weight, there was also resolve, honed through countless battles, forged in the fires of survival. The captain lifted the weapon, aiming it squarely at Zynar. The room seemed to grow colder, the air thick with anticipation. Marcus could feel the eyes of his crew watching, their faith placed in his hands. The hum of the ship faded into the background as all focus zeroed in on this one moment. "You wanted to see what we're capable of," Marcus said, his finger hovering over the trigger. "Don't blink." With a deep breath, he squeezed the trigger. The weapon pulsed, emitting a strange, high-pitched whine. For a split second, nothing happened. Zynar's sneer widened, his confidence unshaken. But then, the whine escalated into a deafening roar, and a burst of energy erupted from the weapon, slamming into the alien general. Zynar's mocking expression froze, then twisted into one of shock as his advanced shielding crumbled under the weapon's force. The room filled with blinding light as the energy continued to surge, pushing the general back, his arrogance shattering with each passing second. Marcus held his ground, eyes locked on the alien. This was just the beginning. The air crackled with residual energy as the light from the weapon faded, leaving the room in stunned silence. Captain Marcus didn't lower his weapon, his eyes never leaving the smoldering figure of General Zynar. The alien's once gleaming armor was scorched, and the sneer had vanished from his reptilian face, replaced by a mix of confusion and fear. Zynar staggered back, struggling to comprehend what had just happened. "Impossible! Your primitive technology! How did it?" His voice trembled, a stark contrast to the arrogance that had dominated the room moments before. Marcus allowed himself a small, grim smile. "You underestimated us," he said, his tone cold and measured. "We may not have your sleek designs or advanced materials, but we understand something you don't: adaptation." As the general tried to regain his composure, Marcus took a step forward, the weapon still humming faintly in his grip. "Humanity has always thrived on adversity," he continued. "When we're pushed to the brink, we innovate, we evolve. This weapon? It's a reflection of that resilience." Zynar's eyes darted around the room, searching for an escape, but the chamber was sealed, the walls lined with energy-dampening material that Marcus had insisted on installing. There would be no easy way out for the alien general. You think you're invincible because your technology is more advanced, Marcus pressed, his voice gaining an edge. But you've grown complacent, too reliant on what you already know. We've been forced to think differently, to challenge every assumption, and that's why you're standing there in disbelief. The general's gaze snapped back to Marcus, anger flaring in his eyes. This changes nothing, he spat. You're still outnumbered, outgunned. One weapon doesn't tip the scales. Marcus lowered the weapon slightly, his expression hardening. Maybe not, he admitted, but it's a start. And if there's one thing you should learn from this, it's that underestimating humanity is a mistake. Before Zynar could respond, the chamber door slid open, and Lieutenant Harris entered, her face grim but determined. Captain, she said, her voice laced with urgency. We've detected a fleet of Xyloxy ships on an intercept course. They'll be here in minutes. Marcus nodded, not surprised by the news. The Xyloxy were predictable in their response, brute force and overwhelming numbers. But this time, humanity had a weapon that could level the playing field, even if only for a short while. Prepare the ship for evasive maneuvers, Marcus ordered, turning to face Harris. And get the prototype ready for deployment. We're going to make sure the Xyloxy understand that this fight is far from over. Harris hesitated for a moment, her eyes flicking to the still-stunned general. Sir, what about him? Marcus's gaze hardened as he looked at Zynar, now a symbol of the Xyloxy's misplaced confidence. He's our prisoner, Marcus said, his voice leaving no room for argument. And he's going to watch as we show his fleet what happens when they underestimate humanity. Zynar's eyes widened, a flash of fear crossing his features. For the first time, the mighty general looked uncertain, the confidence that had defined his every move now shaken to its core. As Harris left to carry out his orders, Marcus turned back to Zynar. Welcome to the new reality, General, he said quietly. This is where your empire's arrogance ends. The ship rumbled as it powered up, the tension in the air growing palpable. The battle was coming, and Marcus knew it would be their toughest yet. But he also knew that humanity had something the Xyloxy could never understand, an indomitable spirit, forged in the fires of survival. And that spirit was about to be unleashed. The ship shuddered violently as it maneuvered through the dense asteroid field, each impact sending shockwaves through the hull. In the command center, Captain Marcus held his breath, his knuckles white as he gripped the armrest of his chair. The Xyloxy fleet was closing in fast, their signature crimson ships visible on the holographic display, converging like a pack of predators. Status report! Marcus barked, his voice cutting through the tense silence. Lieutenant Harris, her hands flying over the console, responded with calm efficiency. Shields holding at 60%, but we've sustained damage to the port thrusters. We're losing maneuverability. Marcus's jaw tightened. Divert power from non-essential systems to the shields and engines. We need to stay mobile. As Harris executed his orders, Marcus's gaze flicked to General Zynar, who was still bound and standing in the corner of the room. The alien general's confidence had evaporated, replaced by a wary, calculating stare. Marcus could see the gears turning in Zynar's mind, trying to anticipate the human's next move. You're running out of time, Captain, Zynar hissed, his voice dripping with venom. The Xyloxy fleet will tear your ship apart. Surrender now, and I may be able to negotiate your survival. Marcus met the general's gaze, his expression hardening into resolve. You still don't get it, do you? He replied, his voice low and steady. This isn't just about survival, it's about sending a message. Humanity won't bow to your empire, no matter the odds. Zynar's eyes narrowed, but he said nothing, his silence a grudging acknowledgement of Marcus's determination. The ship rocked again as a near miss from an enemy blast jarred the crew. Alarms blared, and the lights flickered ominously. Harris glanced at Marcus, concern etched on her face. Captain, they're locking on to us. We won't survive a direct hit from their main cannons. Marcus's mind raced, weighing their dwindling options. He knew they were outgunned, outnumbered, but there was one move left, one that could buy them the time they needed. Prepare the prototype for launch, he ordered, his voice firm. We're going to give them something they won't see coming. Harris hesitated, understanding the gravity of what Marcus was asking. Captain, the prototype is untested. If it fails, we're dead anyway. Marcus interrupted, his tone leaving no room for argument. We've come this far on hope and ingenuity. It's time to put our faith in what we've built. As Harris relayed the command to the engineering team, Marcus turned to face the crew. Listen up, he began, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. We're about to make history, one way or another. The Xyloxi think they have us cornered, but they've underestimated what we're capable of. We're going to show them what it means to fight like a human. The crew responded with a collective nod, their expressions hardening with resolve. They knew the stakes. They were fighting not just for their lives, but for the survival of their species. The ship's internal systems hummed with renewed energy as the prototype weapon was brought online. Marcus felt a surge of adrenaline, knowing that everything hinged on this one final gambit. The Xyloxi fleet was nearly upon them, their weapons primed and ready to deliver the killing blow. On my mark, Marcus commanded, his voice ringing out with the authority of a man who had nothing left to lose. We launch the prototype and pray it's enough. The tension in the room was palpable, every second stretching into an eternity, as the countdown began. Marcus locked eyes with Zynar one last time, seeing the flicker of doubt in the alien's gaze. Now! Marcus shouted, and the ship's hull vibrated as the prototype launched into the void, streaking toward the heart of the Xyloxi fleet. For a moment, time seemed to stand still, the fate of humanity hanging in the balance. The seconds ticked by in agonizing silence as the crew watched the prototype streak toward the Xyloxi fleet. The tension in the command center was so thick it seemed to press down on everyone's chest. Captain Marcus stood at the helm, eyes fixed on the trajectory of the weapon they had gambled everything on. His breath caught as the prototype closed in on the enemy ships. Impact in 3, 2, 1. Lieutenant Harris counted down, her voice barely above a whisper. The screen flared with a brilliant white light as the prototype made contact. For a moment, the Xyloxi ships appeared to be swallowed by the explosion, their crimson hulls disappearing in the blinding flash. The command center erupted in a chorus of gasps and murmurs as the crew tried to process what they were witnessing. But the brightness faded too quickly, revealing the Xyloxi fleet still intact, though battered. Marcus felt his stomach drop. Had their last hope failed? His mind raced as he searched for a contingency plan, something, anything to turn the tide in their favor. Captain, the Xyloxi ships are regrouping, Harris reported, her voice tinged with fear. They've taken damage, but it's not enough to stop them. Marcus clenched his fists, his nails digging into his palms. They had come so close. Too close. And now, it seemed, it was over. But just as despair began to creep into the room, a new signal appeared on the radar, a distortion, something not matching any known profile. What is that? Marcus asked, his voice sharp. Harris scanned the readouts, her brow furrowing in confusion. It's some kind of interference. But it's spreading across their fleet. The Xyloxi ships began to wobble, their formations breaking apart as their systems failed one by one. The prototype, it seemed, had done more than just damage their hulls. It had introduced a virus into their systems, a final trick up humanity's sleeve. Sir, it's working! Their systems are collapsing! Harris exclaimed, a note of triumph in her voice. Marcus allowed himself a small, grim smile. I told you we'd make history today. General Zynar, who had been watching in stunned silence, finally spoke, his voice thick with disbelief. How? How could you have developed something like this? We scoured your databases, infiltrated your networks. This shouldn't have been possible. Marcus turned to face the alien general, his expression unreadable. You underestimated us, Zynar. You thought we were predictable, that we could be broken. But humanity's strength doesn't lie in our technology or our numbers. It lies in our ability to adapt, to surprise, to fight when all seems lost. Zynar's gaze dropped, the weight of his miscalculations evident. And now, what will you do with me? he asked, resignation seeping into his voice. Marcus's eyes hardened. You're a prisoner of war, and you'll be treated as such. But make no mistake, this is a message to your people. If you come for Earth again, you won't just be facing our ships. You'll be facing the spirit of humanity. And that's something no empire can conquer. The Xyloxy fleet, now little more than drifting wrecks, posed no further threat. The crew erupted into cheers, the tension breaking as the reality of their victory sank in. But Marcus's smile was fleeting. He knew this was just one battle in a much larger war. As the ship's systems hummed back to life, Marcus turned his attention to the stars beyond the viewport. Somewhere out there, the Xyloxy Empire was reeling from this unexpected defeat. And though the road ahead would be long and perilous, humanity had taken its first, bold step toward ensuring their survival. Set course for Earth, Marcus ordered, his voice filled with quiet determination. Let's go home. Like, comment, subscribe, and share. I promise you, nothing will happen to your finger.